What if I told you that one of the biggest legal battles in American history, the Roe v. Wade decision, was built on something that wasn't scientific? And then, what if I follow up by telling you that science itself may actually make Roe, with its viability opinion, a pro-life argument? Today, we're continuing our deep dive into the abortion debate, but instead of focusing on when life begins, we're exploring an argument that sidesteps that question entirely, the viability argument. Trust me, this gets messy fast, and with current technology advancing faster than our laws can keep up, the viability argument is about to be flipped completely on its head. Let's get into it. So, viability. Viability is the ability of a fetus to survive outside the uterus, with or without medical help. It's the point where, theoretically, a fetus can live independently of the mother's body. And it's this line that the Supreme Court chose to draw in Roe v. Wade. Not conception, not birth, not even consciousness. Viability. And a lot of states that legalized abortion have built their laws around the same cutoff. And this is why this is so relevant right now. Yes, Roe v. Wade was overturned, but not only do we need to understand it from a historic standpoint, but we need to see how it has been used as a model for other states' abortion laws. And here's the first major question. Why? Why viability? Why was that point chosen as the balance between a woman's right to bodily autonomy and the fetus's right to life? There are two main reasons, usually given. First, before viability, there is no way to save both the woman and the fetus if the woman chooses not to remain pregnant. After viability, theoretically, you can do that. The woman can end her pregnancy and the fetus can survive independently. So viability was seen as the natural compromise, an ethical middle ground, with the mother's right to bodily autonomy trumping the fetus's potential right to life prior to viability. Second reason, viability was supposed to show that abortion wasn't being treated as an absolute right. It wasn't a free-for-all until the moment of birth. It had boundaries, limits. In theory, this made Roe v. Wade more palatable to both pro-choice and pro-life sides. At least, that was the idea. But, as you're about to see, it wasn't that simple. Here's something most people don't realize. The trimester system, the idea that pregnancy is divided into 3 neat stages, each with different legal rights attached, it wasn't created by doctors. It wasn't based on biology. It wasn't rooted in medical consensus. It was literally invented by Justice Blackmun when he wrote the Roe decision, and he admitted that it was totally arbitrary. But his reasoning was basically, well, any point we pick would be arbitrary, so might as well pick this one. Even inside the Supreme Court, there was debate about this. Some of the justices were uncomfortable with the idea that the court was essentially legislating from the bench, essentially creating a framework, not just interpreting the law, which is what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. And that's a big no-no for the judicial branch. Congress makes the laws. Courts are supposed to interpret them. Separation of the branches. But in the end, Blackmun convinced enough of his colleagues to go along with his framework. And so this arbitrary invented system became the basis for abortion law in America. Let that sink in for a second, because it's about to get even trickier. Viability isn't a fixed point in pregnancy. It's a moving target. It depends on medical technology. 50 years ago, a fetus might not survive if born before 28 weeks. Today, some babies survive at 22 or 23 weeks with aggressive neonatal care. But tomorrow, who really knows? Maybe 20 weeks, maybe 18. The more technology advances, the earlier viability moves, and if your entire legal framework is built around viability, then as medicine improves, abortion restrictions logically move closer and closer to conception. That's not just speculation. That's the logical outcome baked into the Roe framework itself. And that raises another uncomfortable question. If viability is a moving target, can it really be the foundation of a constitutional right? Okay, so there's that. Now, let's dive even deeper. Welcome to the future where we have artificial wombs. They're not science fiction anymore. Scientists have already grown premature lambs in artificial wombs. Human trials are closer than we might think. So here's where things get mind-bending. If a fetus could survive outside the uterus at, say, 12 weeks because of an artificial womb, then by Roe's logic, 12 weeks would become the new viability line, maybe even earlier, which leads to some wild questions. If a woman seeks an abortion, but the fetus could survive outside her body, is she still allowed to terminate it? Would she be legally required to transfer the fetus to an artificial womb instead? If she chooses not to, but the fetus is viable, would that be considered harming a separate human being? And if we can remove the fetus and sustain it independently, who's responsible for raising it? The biological parents? The state? Future adoptive parents? The existence of artificial wombs doesn't just blur the viability line, it basically obliterates it. And here's the biggest irony. If artificial wombs become commonplace, pro-choice advocates might actually have to fight against the Roe v. Wade decision. Of course, they don't have to do that now, but essentially the concept of it, they're fighting against it. Because the very case that was used to protect abortion rights could, in the future, be used to restrict them. And again, the case itself is not being used, but the concept of viability, which states have implemented in their laws. Roe v. Wade, or the idea of it, is suddenly pro-life. This is a real-life plot twist. So where does this leave us? It leaves us facing a hard truth. Viability was never a clean, clear standard. It was a compromise based on a moving target which sets up a shaky foundation. And the questions it raises, the ones Roe never fully answered, are even more urgent today. Can we base fundamental rights on something that changes with technology? What happens when science races ahead of law? How do we balance bodily autonomy with the protection of life in a world where both can technically be preserved? These questions are legal, philosophical, ethical, and even existential. And if there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, it's this: abortion isn't just about politics. It's a collision of science, law, technology, philosophy, ethics, and personal values. And pretending it's simple, that it's one clear battle between good guys and bad guys, it's the wrong mindset to have. And I think this entire video proves that point. It's a complex topic. The person you disagree with may not actually be your enemy, although politicians sure hope you believe they are. Instead, they may be standing at a different point on a very complex and uncertain map. So, I want to hear from you guys. If viability is an unstable standard, what should the standard be? If artificial wombs become normal, how should abortion law adapt? And should the government ever have a say in how we define life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one of them. And until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and question everything. Thanks for watching.